Week 13's on us. No game tonight here on Thursday night, but here's 5 tight ends I'm going to bench here. The first guy's Jimmy Graham of the Chicago Bears. Graham, he just hasn't done much now the last 2 or 3 ball games and weeks. And Graham now, owners know that. They've dropped him in a bunch of leagues. He's available in 61% of leagues. This week versus Detroit, they give up the 5th least amount of fantasy points to tight ends. Graham, he hasn't done much, like I said. It's good to see Trubisky in there, but Graham now, he's only reached double-digit fantasy points once since week 6, so that's not a good sign. And he's a guy I just can't trust. They're playing the rookie over him in some formations and packages, so he's a guy I'm going to stay away from. The second guy is Jared Cook of the New Orleans Saints. Cook here, he just hasn't gotten the job done, and now with Taysom Hill at quarterback, he's not going to throw the ball much. And Cook now in his last 3 ball games, he's combined for 5 fantasy points. That's not good. He's not getting the volume. He's not getting the targets. I know he versus Atlanta, who gives up the most fantasy points to tight ends, but I can't trust Cook this week. And we saw in week 11 where he versus the same Atlanta defense only had 1 catch for 6 yards. So Cook, he's a guy I'm going to drop. And if you still have him for whatever reason, he's a guy I'm benching. The third guy here is Noah Fant of the Denver Broncos. Fant, he's a guy I'm not high on this year, but he's still in my top 15 for the rest of the season at tight end, so go check that video out. But Fant here, he's been banged up. Last week with a horrendous quarterback play where they had to start the receiver Kendall Hinton at quarterback. He had 1 catch for 13 yards, and that was the only completion completed in that whole ball game from the Denver Broncos. And this week he versus the Chiefs. The Chiefs, you know they're going to play good and tough. And in week 7, versus the same Chief defense, he only had 3 catches for 38 yards, so it wouldn't surprise me to see Fant put up a similar stat line like he did in week 7. I don't like the matchup. Denver, who knows what's going on over there at quarterback, and he's just a guy I'm going to bench and not have to worry about, especially if you're trying to get into the playoffs. This is a tough guy to play at this point. The next guy I'm benching is Austin Hooper of the Cleveland Browns. Hooper, yeah, I know he had a touchdown last week, but besides that, he hasn't done much since he came off injury. In week 10 is Hooper now. And Hooper, he was a good tight end last season, but this year it's the quarterback play more than anything. Since week 10 versus Houston, he had 1 catch, 11 yards. Week 11 versus Philly, 3 catches, 33 yards. And then last week, like I said, 2 catches, 13 yards, and a touchdown. So without that touchdown, the targets aren't there, the catches aren't there. So Hooper, he's a guy, I would just put him back on the wire. He's still owned in a whopping 71% of fantasy leagues. And I don't like that number. I don't like the matchup. And he's a guy I'm going to bench. And the 5th and final tight end I'm benching this week's Dallas Goddard of the Philadelphia Eagles. I know Goddard, he's been exploding and having huge ball games. But this is with Zach Ertz coming back now is a reason I'm benching him and not high on him. And plus Green Bay, they give up the 2nd least amount of fantasy points to tight end. So Goddard, a great game he had on Monday night. The last 2 games he's went off, but the matchup I don't like. And Ertz coming back I don't like. If you don't have other options at tight end, obviously you stock Goddard, but don't expect a big ball game out of him like you have in the last 2. So that's 5 tight ends I'm looking to bench here heading into week 13.